Attention! The makers of Encore are not responsible for this song being stuck in your head until further notice. I'm Ruby Carr, and this is the story of Barenaked Ladies, 1 week.
You know the songs.
Just making people feel something.
It's been a pleasure to work on this song with her.
But do you know the history?
It's a struggle making any kind of record.
I don't always have the direction or concept.
This is Encore, an in-depth look at the stories behind the music. Here's iHeartRadio's Ruby Carr.
It's been 1 week since the last episode of Encore, and now here we are with another one, our 79th episode in total. Yes, we counted. Now, in music, novelty acts, they don't tend to last very long. In fact, the average best before date on a novelty act lasts only about as long as a box of Kraft Dinner, sometimes less. Back when Barenaked Ladies first emerged from the depths of Scarborough, they were widely considered a novelty act, largely because they mixed such a heavy dose of comedy into their genre-bending music. And yes, some of that music involved Kraft Dinner. We're going to get to that later. Originally, the band considered themselves to be a novelty act. Singer Stephen Page would tell Now magazine, "We started out not really confident in ourselves as musicians. We wanted to be a novelty act. The idea was to make ourselves laugh and make the audience laugh. So we dress up in weird matching outfits. Some people do keep those misconceptions that we're a novelty act, but not those who keep coming back to the shows." Stephen spoke more about the idea of being a novelty act during an interview with Much Music.
Is it bad to be considered a novelty act if you're still selling records and if you still have fans that appreciate your music?
Well, because, novelty, it means it's like it's new, it's fresh, it's novel. I used to have to try and justify that all the time. I don't think we're really a novelty band, but we certainly have had novelty hits. $1 Million is a novelty song, 1 week is a novelty song in a certain way. But I think they're ones that have some resonance.
Unlike so many official or unofficial novelty acts, Barenaked Ladies have resonated with millions and millions of music lovers for more than 35 years now. What started out as a bunch of guys singing jokey songs about becoming millionaires and being back in grade 9 developed into one of Canada's most beloved and successful musical acts in that time span. They've had #1 hits all over the world, one of the best-selling independent releases in Canadian history, and made Prince's favorite album of 1999. Maybe. Well, no one actually knows, but still, there's a convincing rumor he was a fan. Before Barenaked Ladies had any fans, they were a duo formed in 1988 by Stephen Page and Ed Robertson, a couple of teenagers who attended Churchill Heights High School in Scarborough, Ontario. The two began hanging out at Scarborough School's music camp, where they were both camp counselors, eventually singing and performing together. On an episode of VH1's Behind the Music, Stephen would say, "One thing that impressed me about Ed was as soon as I started singing with him, he had a perfect ear for harmony, so the two of us could sing together easily." Stephen and Ed decided to officially form their own band and come up with the attention-grabbing name while attending a Bob Dylan concert at Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. Stephen would tell the Los Angeles Times, "The concert was terrible, so boring, that we sat there and talked about all these fake bands we'd like to be in and started coming up with dumb names for them. I don't know which of us said Barenaked Ladies, but we laughed our heads off. It's something we'd say when we were 9 or 10 years old, a phrase we'd forgotten, so it was charming when it popped back up." Naturally, they would get asked about the name for years. It would even ignite a controversy, so more on that in a bit. But the guys always had fun explaining it when they were asked. Here's a clip of them discussing it with Much Music.
The name is just to imply sort of youthful naivete.
And it's a kid's term, and adults rarely use it, so we wanted to capture that youthful.
Actually, it's a baking term.
Okay.
And actually, it's a term coined by Count Dracula in the 1930s.
All right.
It's my mom's name, so we named the band after her.
Well, that's very profound. Thank you very much. What do you think about it? You didn't say nothing.
No, I just passed that one on to everybody else, didn't I? I always thought we were called Alias, so I didn't even think about it.
The duo's first gig together was a benefit for the Second Harvest Food Bank outside of Toronto City Hall on October 1st, 1988. Because they didn't have many songs, Barenaked Ladies spent a lot of their performance improvising and coming up with music on the spot while interacting with the crowd. They impressed the booking agent of the Horseshoe Tavern so much, he offered them their first official gig that same week. They began playing more shows, which featured one set of their own songs and another with covers and requests. Before the end of 1988, Barenaked Ladies released their first cassette called, wait for it, Buck Naked, naturally. It wasn't until they were invited to tour across Canada with comedy music troupe Corky and the Juice Pigs that Stephen and Ed got a taste of what it was like to be a proper band. They both abandoned their post-secondary educations at York University to concentrate full-time on Barenaked Ladies. And yes, I know how that sounds. At the final show of their tour in Toronto, they were joined by Andy and Jim Cregan, friends from camp who played drums and bass. Not long after, Barenaked Ladies doubled in size to a quartet.
Your bio says you call your music acoustic hip-hop.
We've been looking for a lot of names for it, and we called it bossa country, thrash folk. But acoustic hip hop.
We call it Chinese folk music for a long time.
That's right.
Well, that's because we were doing a lot of Chinese folk music at the time.
But we go through phases. So
Okay.
Hip hop. I think we do a lot of sampling. We don't have electronic equipment to do that. We just do a lot of stuff off each other's bodies and stuff.
That was Barenaked Ladies explaining to Much Music just what kind of music they made. As they became a four-piece, their sound began to develop and become virtually any kind of genre they wanted it to. Pop, country, folk, hip-hop, polka, you name it, they did it. The foursome recorded another cassette with the laughable title of Barenaked Lunch, a play on the William Burroughs book Naked Lunch. But just 6 months after joining the band, Andy Cregan left for a student exchange program with Canada World Youth. So the band found themselves without a drummer. Enter Tyler Stewart, who Stephen, Ed, and Jim met at the Waterloo Busker Festival in the summer of 1990. At first, the guys weren't sure about Tyler's rock style of drumming, but eventually they accepted his offer to join the band. Barenaked Ladies would close out 1990 by winning Best Band/Musical Group at the YTV Achievement Awards that recognized young Canadian talent. Soon after, a pivotal moment occurred. Before one of their gigs at the Rivoli in Toronto, the band walked down the street and squeezed into the Speaker's Corner booth. Do you remember that? Outside of the City TV Much Music building, where anyone off the street could record a video and voice their opinion. It was basically a precursor to TikTok, kind of. The guys sang a song called Be My Yoko Ono, and for the cost of a loonie, that's a $1 coin to anyone listening outside of Canada, Barenaked Ladies recorded what would unintentionally become their first music video. It got them some airplay on Much Music and even won them a prize on the weekly Speaker's Corner TV show. Here they are talking about it on Much Music.
I don't know if that's how we got famous, but it certainly helped. I don't know if we're famous yet either, but either way, it was a dollar well spent because it got played certainly enough times for
I don't think it was our dollar, was it? I think it was Tim's dollar.
Yeah, I think it was Ed's friend's dollar. That's right. That's true.
When Andy returned from his trip, he rejoined the band on percussion and keyboards. After gaining some attention from their Speaker's Corner video, the band recorded a new cassette they could take down to Austin, Texas with them for their appearance at South by Southwest. They simply called it Barenaked Ladies, but the tape's yellow cover featured an illustration of a sandwich, so it earned it the nickname of the Yellow Tape and Sandwich EP. Songs from the tape began receiving airplay on local radio, and the cassette began selling copies in the thousands, even charting in Canada and outselling every artist from Michael Jackson to U2 at stores. Here they are talking to Much Music about the Yellow Sandwich tape.
It was a strange thing for us just because we started selling it off the stage at our gigs, like most bands do when they're starting out and they're playing gigs in their hometown and people want to take 5 songs home with them or whatever. And next thing we knew, we were getting calls from record stores, and next thing we knew after that, it had sold 50,000 copies. I mean, now it's up about 85,000 or something. So it was the first independent to ever do that, the first cassette to ever do that, and it went like top 20 in Canada. So lots of records there, and we weren't trying for it, honest.
It's kind of exciting in the way that a lot of independent bands now are saying, well, hey, we can do it too. If Barenaked Ladies can do it, then we can blow them out of the water, so I mean.
The cassette eventually went gold in Canada, an unheard of achievement for an independent release. Its popularity helped Barenaked Ladies win the Discovery to Disc contest, winning them a whopping $100,000 grant they could put towards studio time. Not long after, they were asked to contribute a cover for a tribute album to Bruce Cockburn, a Canadian artist they all loved. They recorded a poignant rendition of Cockburn's Lovers in a Dangerous Time, which demonstrated that Barenaked Ladies weren't just looking for laughs. They also made a video for the song, their first true music video, which went into rotation on Much Music. The next big step was to record an album and find a label to release it. But before that could happen, Barenaked Ladies would ignite some controversy over their name. The band was scheduled to perform at a concert outside of Toronto City Hall in Nathan Phillips Square on New Year's Eve 1991, but they were removed when the mayor's office argued the name Barenaked Ladies was offensive. Suddenly, they were making the news, but it wasn't about the music. One Toronto Star headline read, "Naked Ladies Banned." In the article, events coordinator Donna Proudman said, "We do have a policy against the objectification of women or any other sector of the community. If your mother or my mother saw a headline saying City of Toronto presents Barenaked Ladies, they'd be concerned." Even though they gained a lot of publicity over the incident, Stephen Page told the New Music that they didn't want any of it.
Yeah, but that's an easy thing for people to say is, oh, well, you couldn't have bought that publicity you got. And it's true, we couldn't have bought it, but why would we have wanted to buy it? I mean, buy that kind of publicity. It was good for us in the sense that lots of people stuck up for us. But it was stuck up for us.
The past tense is stuck up.
For me, it was a little bit distressing to see people my age or older or younger saying, "Oh, it's feminists like the mayor of Toronto," or it's feminists who are ruining stuff. I think in a lot of ways it brought out the worst in people, and that's not the defense we wanted. We didn't want people to blame it on feminism because that wasn't the problem. I think that they just misunderstood what the band was all about, and that's where the problem happened in City Hall.
In the end, Barenaked Ladies would overcome the negative attention. Eventually, Toronto Mayor June Rowlands would invite them to play a different event, but the ladies, they politely declined. They had better things to worry about, like making their debut album for their brand new label, Sire Records, home to artists like Madonna, The Cure, and The Smiths. With $100,000 in their pockets, Barenaked Ladies went to Le Studio in Morin Heights, Quebec, with producer-engineer Michael Philip Voivoda, who had previously worked with Canadian indie legends such as Change of Heart, Doughboys, and Rheostatics. Now, I don't think anyone was really wondering, but yes, the band did record some of the music in the nude. For a while, this was even a thing, and the producer was also in his birthday suit. I don't know. I don't get it either. They named the album Gordon. Why Gordon? Well, here is Steven explaining why they chose such a random name to the New Music.
No, we called it because Gordon from Sesame Street's a cool guy, I think. I think that's... When I think of Gordon from Sesame Street. So I think, for me, that is what I named it after. I don't know who you named it after.
It was... The decision we made, though, was to name it, because so many people title albums and the titles have so much meaning that we decided to give it a name and it just kind of be there.
A number of songs from the early cassettes were re-recorded and polished, including fan favorites like Brian Wilson and If I Had $1 Million. Now about that song, it would be released as one of the singles from the album and become one of their signature songs, even to this day. But it's one line in particular that stood out to their Canadian fans. If I had $1 million, we wouldn't have to eat Kraft Dinner, but we would eat Kraft Dinner. Of course we would. We'd just eat more. That line inspired many fans to start throwing boxes of Kraft Dinner on stage. At first, the band thought it was funny and cute, but eventually the novelty, there's that word again, wore off. Ed would tell CBC it became a problem. We actually had to put out a message like, we get the joke, we love it, but please put your Kraft Dinner in the bin and we will donate it to the food bank. I got hit in the face, Steven got hit in the nuts, and it became a point in the show we dreaded. Apparently, some people opened up the packets and would throw it on stage so the cheese powder would go everywhere, which is so gross. I don't even like to think about it. Think of the smell. Anyway, when it was released on July 28th, 1992, Gordon was an instant hit. And I mean that. It sold 80,000 copies in Canada just in its first 24 hours of release alone. It would stay atop of the Canadian charts for 8 consecutive weeks and eventually go on to sell more than 1 million copies. Here are some Barenaked Ladies celebrating having the #1 record in Canada with the New Music.
We have a #1 record in Canada.
We're number one.
We're number one. No, it's not like that at all.
But we did. Our manager brought us into his hotel room today to tell us the news and gave us all those big #1 styrofoam things.
We put them on our hands.
We waved them. We waved them.
With all that said, Gordon may actually be remembered most for its album cover. It's, well, let's hear what the band had to say about it. In an interview with the National Post, Tyler confessed, "It's absolutely the worst album cover in the history of music. It's like some crappy font with photos of us wrapped around it. We're all looking overly cute and earnest. It's just terrible." I actually think he was a little harsh. I kind of like it. Despite being the biggest thing since bagged milk in Canada, Gordon was not a hit whatsoever in America. Maybe they had the album cover to blame, I don't know, but it did find fans, including some folks at the Fox network. They commissioned the band to make a video to promote racial harmony and acceptance of diversity. It seems a little hard to believe now, but that is actually true. That is a thing that happened. Barenaked Ladies were looking to keep the momentum going and began to work on their second album. But this time, they approached things differently. Recording with Katie Lang's close collaborator, Ben Mink, the band moved away from Gordon's goofy nature. Steven and Ed divided the songwriting instead of collaborating like they normally did. They were both suffering from depression. This led to more of an introspective, serious tone to the songs. Ed would later tell Noisy, "I was just less engaged in general, and I think the band was quite fractured at the time. I think the overnight and runaway success of the first record had put us into a very strange place when it came to make the difficult sophomore album. And I'd had some difficult times. My older brother had passed away in a motorcycle accident, and it was just a very tough time for me. I wasn't ready to go and make another record, and then the band wasn't communicating well. The studio process was difficult, so many things conspired to make that record a really difficult process for me, and as a result, it's hard for me to attach to the songs on that record." Released on August 16, 1994, Maybe You Should Drive showed off a different, more mature side to Barenaked Ladies. On the strength of singles like Alternative Girlfriend and Jane, it had some success in Canada, going 2 times gold, but it also failed to make much of a dent in the U.S. market. It wasn't just the sound of the band that changed, so did the personnel. Andy, who was ready to leave during the recording process, finally decided that he was done as a Barenaked Lady, instead deciding to pursue a degree in music studies at McGill University. The band was back to being a quartet, but not for long. After Andy Cregan left the band, Barenaked Ladies jumped right into making their next album. They went back to working with Gordon producer Michael Philip Voivoda and tried to inject more fun into the recording process. Once again, they found the silliness and bond through music that helped form the band in the first place. And they instilled it into the songs and the album title, Born on a Pirate Ship. Weird name for an album, right? Well, if you imitate the kid on the cover and pull on the sides of your mouth, you'll get it. I was on a pirate ship. I don't know if that super worked, but, those silly ladies. For the band, it was an attempt to take some of the pressure off that they had felt making the previous album. Ed would tell Vice, "In making Born on a Pirate Ship, we had resigned ourselves to okay, we're not going to be this successful pop band. We're too weird and quirky, and we take too many left turns in everything we do." Unlike the albums before it, Pirate Ship wasn't a hit with their fans. In fact, their Canadian audience was shrinking. Stephen would tell Maclean's, "We went from selling out 4 nights at Toronto's Massey Hall to not being able to sell out a single night. It's a hard thing to get used to, especially in your hometown." So the band made a drastic move, dumping their manager and hiring a new one in Terry McBride, who had achieved success with one of his former clients, Sarah McLachlan. McBride immediately began focusing on the band cracking America, because often with music, what America likes, Canada likes, especially when it comes to their own artists. And wouldn't you know it, they finally scored a modest hit in the U.S. with their song, The Old Apartment. A lot of that had to do with the band making friends with Beverly Hills 90210 star and fellow Canadian Jason Priestley. Not only did he direct the music video, he also invited them to make an appearance on the popular TV show to play the song at the Peach Pit after dark, a hip club where teens could hang and see cool bands, you remember. Barenaked Ladies became a 5-piece again when Tyler invited his friend Kevin Hearn to join the band, basically taking over the role Andy left. Building their audience in the U.S. now, they also recorded a live album called Rock Spectac, which, surprise, surprise, scored another hit for the band with their live version of Brian Wilson, a song that had been in their repertoire since the early days. Fun fact, Brian Wilson himself loved the song so much, he even recorded a version of it. Trying to capitalize on their U.S. success, Barenaked Ladies went back into the studio to make another record. Steven called up one of his idols, English singer-songwriter Stephen Duffy, to collaborate on some songs with him. He would tell the Halifax Herald, "We hope to make a good, all-purpose summer kind of record, the kind you just put on and like." I think that's what everybody tries to do, but I think we really tried. I don't think we recorded it with a sense of making something that would do something commercially from the record company's point of view. But Rock Spectac was designed to act as a bridge between Born on a Pirate Ship and this record, and it did that way better than we ever expected. And boy, did it ever turn out better than they expected.
What can the BNL fans expect off this one? Are you able to say anything about this one? Or
Yeah, sure. It's 13 absolutely perfect songs. It's a great record. We're really happy with it. I think in some ways it's our strongest record. There's some great songs, some great performances. First single song called 1 Week.
Cool.
That was Stephen Page telling Much Music about Barenaked Ladies' 4th album, Stunt. The single 1 Week recaptured the giddy, playful nature of the band's earlier work, combining Stephen's booming melodies in the chorus with Ed's comedic freestyle rapping. Both singers presented highly memorable moments. How many times have you heard someone mimic, "It's been," not to mention all of the pop cultural reference points in Ed's rap? So let's see. Swiss Chalet, X-Files, Harrison Ford, Sailor Moon, LeAnn Rimes, to name a few. Ed would tell Much Music that these were all things that were coming to mind while he was freestyling in the studio.
Where the heck did those lines come from? Is that a stream of conscious thing that you're singing?
It was. That was written as a freestyle rap off the top of my head.
You mentioned wasabi, LeAnn Rimes, it's all in there.
Digging the sushi lately? Digging LeAnn Rimes lately?
Okay.
I feel it's important to tell you that LeAnn Rimes loved the idea of being name-dropped in the song, though she was a little confused at first. Ed would tell NME, "In 1 week, I sing the lyric, 'Big like LeAnn Rimes,' and she burst into our dressing room at a festival once and said, 'What do you mean, big like LeAnn Rimes?' I replied, 'Big like popular,' and she said, 'Oh, I thought y'all was saying I was fat.'" In an interview with Newsweek, Ed said he needed to improvise because he just couldn't finish the song. "I had the structure of the choruses and the idea of this relationship breakup. I kept trying to write these rap verses and they were always crappy." Stephen Page suggested, "Why don't you just freestyle them? The stuff you freestyle every night on stage is better than the stuff you're trying to write." I improvised 4 verses literally in a minute and a half. Then I edited the 4 verses into 2. Then I sent in the demo, which was just an acoustic guitar, a drum loop, and me singing the song. Ed used his family's Hi8 camcorder and tripod to film himself freestyling for a few minutes, then transcribed the words and edited them. In fact, you can find some of the best couplets that didn't make the cut in the liner notes for Stunt. As we've come to expect from the songs we feature in Encore, 1 Week was the final song Barenaked Ladies submitted for Stunt, and at first, they didn't think it would make the final cut. Always, right? Initially, they figured it would just be a bonus track or B-side, but their label Sire loved the song and informed the band that 1 Week was going to be the lead single from the album. 1 Week came out in the summer of 1998, and yes, it really did become the song of that summer. In no time, it was a global hit, reaching number 3 in Canada, but topping the Hot 100 in the US, making their first ever number 1 hit, and confirming that yes, Barenaked Ladies had broken America. True to its name, though, 1 Week topped the Hot 100 for exactly 1 week. In an interview with Songfacts, Ed joked, "I maybe should have called it 58 weeks, but the title was more prophetic than I could have hoped." Of course, when it came to performing the song, being able to replicate it live on stage presented a challenge. Ed told The Guardian, "It took us ages to figure out how to play it live because it's sneakily complicated. We eventually realized we'd have to trigger all the keyboard layers and subsonic parts to make it sound more like the record. But the lyrics, he admitted, were rather easy to perform, which he likened to playing Tetris, just fitting them in together with no spaces." For the music video, they hired Mick G, who had directed videos for The Offspring, Smash Mouth, and Sugar Ray. The video featured references to everything from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Evel Knievel to the Dukes of Hazzard and Starsky and Hutch. It was almost impossible to turn on Much Music or MTV in the summer of '98 without seeing it multiple times a day. 1 week was everywhere for months. And yes, it didn't take long for the GOAT, Weird Al Yankovic, to parody it, which he did with a song he called Jerry Springer. Stunt, the album, was released on July 7th, 1998, and it immediately changed everything for Barenaked Ladies. With the popularity of 1 week, the album entered the Billboard charts at number 3, the biggest chart debut for the band ever. Heck, it only reached number 9 in Canada, but the album went 4 times platinum in both countries and has sold close to 5 million copies to date. Both the album and the single's success had a lot of people assuming Barenaked Ladies came out of nowhere. Here they are addressing that to Much Music.
Yeah, are some people perceiving the band as an overnight success down there?
I think that's happening a bit, but generally, I think there is the knowledge that we've been slugging it out for a long time.
Which is good.
I think more than anything, people are surprised at the level of success now. This is our 5th record, and for this album to enter the chart, the Billboard chart at number 3, like it did, people kind of went, "What?
What the?"
You know?
Including us.
When it came to award season, the success of 1 week and Stunt translated into multiple wins for the band. While they didn't win a Grammy or MTV Video Music Award, the song earned Barenaked Ladies their first ever nominations for Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group and Best Art Direction, respectively. At the 1999 Juno Awards, however, they cleaned up, winning for Best Group, Best Pop Album, and of course, Best Single. 1 week also won them 2 Billboard Music Awards for Best Clip, Alternative Modern Rock, and something called the Maximum Vision Award. But the biggest accolade of all came from the legendary Prince, who is said to have called Stunt his favorite album of 1998. Okay, I know it seems unlikely, so here is Ed explaining that to Much Music.
What happened was, in an interview we did one time, we were just talking nonsense, and Steve said, "Oh, Prince is a huge fan. Actually, he loves Barenaked Ladies."
I said, "Well, in the words of our good friend Prince, Stunt, the album of 1998."
That's right. And I said, "Yeah, the artist formerly known as Prince is not a big fan, but Prince loves us." And we were joking around like that, and next thing you know, it was quoted everywhere that Prince thought it was the best album. The funniest part, though, is we heard that Prince thought it was the best album of 1998, and we were all really excited. We didn't realize it was us that said it. So
Magic of TV.
We encourage the artist formerly known as Prince to have a listen. He may like it.
After years of hard work, Barenaked Ladies were finally global superstars, especially in the U.S., where they had somehow eclipsed even their popularity at home in Canada.
But after 11 years, what do you think that really brought you over the top as far as the international market, and specifically the American market's concerned?
What pushed it over the top?
Yeah.
I don't know. There was this crazy little single called 1 Week.
That is the most obnoxious thing I've ever heard you say.
Yes.
Any Canadian over a certain age knows Barenaked Ladies were not any of the following: a novelty act, a one-hit wonder, or an overnight sensation. They had been a national treasure and a constant hitmaker in Canada, both before and after 1 week made them a household name in other parts of the world. But it's pretty remarkable to witness the impact the song had on their career. They are one of only 29 Canadian artists to have a number 1 in the U.S. Heck, even Noel Gallagher of Oasis knows 1 week. Though, according to a run-in he had with Ed, Noel might actually think it's called China, China, Chinese Chicken. Why it became such a massive hit when it did had a lot to do with timing. Ed told Exclaim, "The energy was huge, the lyrics were timely, the challenge of catching them all became a thing. The song became ubiquitous with that time period. I think it just really captured a strange band in a wild moment. People were up for it." The band have always expressed their gratitude for the song's success. Ed told NME, "I've never understood artists who have a difficult relationship with their hit songs. When it became a worldwide #1 song, it was great because it was indicative of what the band does live. It's fun and super high energy. There was a time when, yes, we got a little bored of playing it live, so we just did it differently, like we did it as a bluegrass song for 18 months before returning to the rock version." It's also worth noting that when Stephen Page departed the band in 2009 for reasons I won't get into, Kevin took over singing his parts with Tyler adding some harmonies. In the years since its release, 1 Week has appeared in a Mitsubishi Lancer commercial, on the soundtrack to Digimon the movie, in the films American Pie, Cruel Intentions, and 10 Things I Hate About You, and most recently in a hilarious episode of What We Do in the Shadows, where it's a life anthem at a wellness center for a group of reformed vampires. They even performed the song on an episode of The West Wing. Perhaps the weirdest thing to come from the song's massive success is a strange, unproven theory that emerged on Reddit, claiming 1 Week was written about a man who kills his girlfriend with a golf club. Ed would debunk the theory, calling it hilarious but inaccurate. I'm Ruby Carr. Thanks for listening to me talk about 1 Week. Join me 1 week from now for another new episode of Encore. New episodes every Thursday.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Download the free iHeartRadio app and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.